What happens when a man in a simple gray hoodie and worn-out jeans walks into a Beverly Hills luxury car dealership? For Damian Hayes, the self-made CEO of a billion-dollar tech giant, it meant being looked down on, dismissed, and finally told to his face, "Sir, with all due respect, you can't afford this car." But for the arrogant salesman who uttered those fateful words, it meant the end of his career in a single jaw-dropping moment. This isn't just a story of instant karma. It's a gripping account of how one man's casual prejudice set off a chain reaction that shook a global automotive empire to its foundations. Stay with us as we unravel a story where a quiet Saturday afternoon turned into a firestorm of corporate panic, personal ruin, and ultimately a force for change that would impact thousands of lives forever. The Southern California sun was doing what it did best, bathing the world in a haze of effortless, expensive-looking gold. It glinted off the chrome of 1,000 cars crawling along Santa Monica Boulevard, but nowhere did it shine with more ferocity than on the pristine, polished surfaces of the vehicles arrayed inside Sterling Motors of Beverly Hills. Sterling Motors wasn't just a dealership. It was a temple dedicated to the gods of horsepower and opulence. Its plate glass windows were like portals into a world of impossible wealth, showcasing automotive sculptures from Rolls-Royce Bentley and the hyper-exclusive Koenigsegg. Inside this temple, Chad Peterson was restless. He smoothed down his perfectly tailored silver-gray suit for the 10th time, the fabric a testament to a lifestyle he was desperately trying to maintain. Chad was the quintessential salesman for a place like this, sharp, handsome in a conventional way, with a smile that could flash from charming to predatory in a fraction of a second. But beneath the veneer of success, a current of desperation ran deep. He was 3 months behind on the mortgage for his condo in West Hollywood, a fact his fiancée Tiffany reminded him of with increasing frequency. He was driving a demonstrator model that his manager Robert Miller had pointedly reminded him was a privilege, not a right. He needed a big sale, not just a want but a bone-deep existential need. He scanned the floor. A tech bro in a designer t-shirt was kicking the tires of a Bentley Continental GT. An older woman dripping in diamonds was discussing bespoke leather options with a colleague. These were his people, the familiar fish in his barrel. Then the automatic doors whispered open and Damian Hayes walked in. To Chad, Damian was an anomaly, a glitch in the carefully curated matrix of wealth. He wore a simple, unbranded gray hoodie, the kind you'd buy in a 3-pack at Target. His jeans were faded and comfortable, paired with a pair of well-worn Nike sneakers. He carried no designer bag, wore no ostentatious watch. His quiet confidence and the observant way his eyes scanned the showroom were invisible to Chad. All Chad saw was a person who had clearly taken a wrong turn. Damian, for his part, was enjoying a rare moment of anonymity. As the founder and CEO of Ethereum Dynamics, a pioneering firm in renewable energy and AI logistics, his face was a regular feature in Forbes and Wired. His days were a whirlwind of board meetings, investor calls, and strategy sessions that decided the future of a $15 billion company. But today was Saturday. Today he wasn't Damian Hayes, the tech titan. He was just Damian, a son, looking to buy a very special gift. His father, a retired mechanic named George Hayes, was turning 70. For 40 years, George had worked in a greasy garage in Inglewood, sacrificing everything so his son could have a shot at a different life. He had instilled in Damian a love for machines, not for their status, but for their engineering their soul. And for as long as Damian could remember, his father had one impossible dream car, a Rolls-Royce Phantom. Not just any Phantom, but one in British racing green, a nod to the classic cars he'd adored as a young man. Damian, who could have bought the entire dealership with a rounding error from his company's quarterly profits, wanted to give his father that dream. He wasn't dressed down to test anyone. He was dressed down because this was who he was when the world wasn't watching. He had earned the right to be comfortable. He drifted past a gleaming white Bentley, his eyes not on the price tag, but on the panel gaps, the quality of the paint finish. His father had taught him what to look for. He appreciated the craftsmanship. Chad watched him from across the floor, a smirk playing on his lips. He leaned over to a junior salesman, a young man named Kevin. "Watch this," Chad muttered, his voice laced with disdain. "Lost tourist season must be starting early. Probably looking for the restroom." Ignoring Kevin's nervous chuckle, Chad straightened his tie and began to stride across the marble floor. He didn't see a potential customer. He saw a nuisance, someone who was lowering the tone of the showroom and taking up valuable oxygen that could be breathed by actual buyers. His approach was not one of welcome, but of interception. He was a bouncer in a suit about to politely or not so politely show a trespasser the door. Damien had just stopped in front of the centerpiece of the showroom, the Rolls-Royce Phantom. It was a magnificent beast painted in a deep, lustrous black. It wasn't the green he wanted, but it was the right model. He ran a hand gently over the cool metal of the fender, his mind already picturing his father's face. "Can I help you, sir?" The voice cut through his reverie. It was smooth but with an undercurrent of impatience. Damien turned to face the salesman. He saw the expensive suit, the perfect hair, the condescending glint in the eyes. He had seen this look 1,000 times in his life, in boardrooms from men who underestimated him, from venture capitalists who'd initially refused to fund him, from maitre d's at restaurants where he now held a permanent reservation. It was a look that judged the book by its very worn, very comfortable cover. "Yes," Damien said, his voice calm and even. "I'm interested in this Phantom. I have a few questions about custom ordering options." Chad's smile tightened. Custom ordering? This guy, it was almost funny. "Of course, sir," he said, the "sir" dripping with insincerity. "The Phantom is our flagship, a truly remarkable piece of engineering. The model you see here starts at around $480,000, though with bespoke options, it can easily exceed $600,000. He delivered the numbers like blows, expecting them to make the man flinch, to stammer an apology and back away. Damien didn't flinch. "I'm aware of the price," he said simply. "I'm more interested in the lead time for a custom paint job and interior specifications. I'd like one in British racing green with a cream leather interior." Chad almost laughed. The audacity was incredible. This was a game, and he was growing tired of playing. A fully bespoke order can take anywhere from 6 to 12 months. Chad said, his tone shifting from condescending to dismissive. "It requires a significant, non-refundable deposit, of course. Perhaps," he gestured vaguely towards a corner of the lot, "you'd be more interested in our certified pre-owned selection. We have a very nice Cadillac from a few years back. Much more accessible." The insult veiled as it was hung in the air between them. Accessible. A word meant to put Damien in his place. Damien's expression didn't change, but a switch had been flipped. The quiet, anonymous Saturday was over. He was no longer just a son buying a gift. He was Damien Hayes, CEO of Ethereum Dynamics, a man who had not built an empire by backing down from subtle or not so subtle intimidation. "No," Damien said, his voice dropping slightly, losing its warmth and gaining a hard, clear edge of authority. "I'm not interested in the Cadillac. I'm interested in this car, and I'm interested in buying it today. If not this one, then I will place the bespoke order from someone who is willing to sell it to me." The battle lines had been drawn on the polished marble floor of Sterling Motors. And Chad Peterson, high on arrogance and blinded by prejudice, had no idea he was about to charge headfirst into his own professional annihilation. A tense silence descended around the black Rolls-Royce Phantom. The ambient hum of the showroom, the soft murmur of other conversations, the whisper of the air conditioning seemed to fade into nothingness. There was only the space between Damien Hayes and Chad Peterson, a space now crackling with unspoken conflict. Chad felt a surge of indignation. Who was this guy strolling in off the street, dressed like he was going to a garage sale, and making demands about a $500,000 car? Chad's desperation for a commission was now warring with his deeply ingrained prejudice and pride. In his mind, Damien wasn't just a waste of time. He was an affront to the established order of this luxurious world. He was a challenge to Chad's authority as a gatekeeper of the elite. And Chad was not about to be told what to do by someone he had already mentally categorized and dismissed. He decided to end it. No more veiled suggestions, no more polite redirection. It was time for the kill shot. He took a small step closer, invading Damien's personal space, a classic intimidation tactic. He lowered his voice to a conspiratorial, almost pitying tone. "Look," Chad began, dropping the "sir. "I've been doing this a long time. I know the clients. I know their capabilities. Let's not waste each other's time. It's a beautiful car to dream about, but let's be realistic. He paused for effect, letting the insult land before delivering the final fatal blow. With all due respect, he said the words a mockery of the sentiment. You can't afford this car. The words hung in the air stark and ugly. They were absolute a judgment delivered as fact. Chad's face was a mask of smug certainty. He had done it. He had put the upstart in his place. He expected a flash of anger, a mumbled curse, a dejected retreat. He was prepared for any of those. He was not prepared for the profound, unnerving stillness that followed. Damian Hayes did not get angry. He did not raise his voice. He simply looked at Chad, his dark eyes holding the salesman's gaze without a flicker of emotion. It was a look of pure analytical assessment, as if he were examining a flawed line of code. In that moment of silence, Damian saw everything, the cheap arrogance, the deep-seated insecurity, the casual bigotry that Chad wore as comfortably as his tailored suit. Finally, Damian gave a single slow nod. I see, he said, his voice chillingly calm. He reached into the pocket of his hoodie and pulled out his phone. It was a simple standard-issue smartphone, not some jewel-encrusted status symbol. Chad smirked. Probably going to pretend to call his banker, he thought. Damian's thumb moved deftly across the screen. He wasn't looking for a bank app. He was looking for a name in his contacts, Robert Miller, the general manager of Sterling Motors of Beverly Hills. Damian had Miller's number because Miller had personally tried to recruit him for an exclusive Ethereum CEO program 2 months prior, an offer Damian had politely declined. Miller had been persistent, leaving his direct cell number in case Mr. Hayes ever needed anything. Anything at all. The phone rang twice before it was answered. Robert Miller speaking. Robert! Damian's voice was level, betraying none of the insult he had just endured. This is Damian Hayes. Across the showroom, Robert Miller, a portly man in his late 50s, with a perpetually worried expression, froze mid-sip of his coffee. Damian Hayes, the tech billionaire. The one who got away, his mind raced. Was he calling to reconsider the program, to complain about a marketing email? Mr. Hayes, what a surprise, a pleasure to hear from you. To what do I owe the honor? Robert's voice was a waterfall of professional sycophancy. Chad, meanwhile, was watching this performance with growing unease. The name Robert and the shift in the man's demeanor sent a tiny shiver of doubt through him. But it was impossible. A coincidence. I'm standing in your showroom, Robert. Damian continued, his eyes still locked on Chad. I'm right in front of the Black Phantom. I came here today quietly to give your dealership my business. I wanted to order a bespoke vehicle as a gift for my father. In his office, Robert Miller felt a thrill of excitement, a phantom sale from Damian Hayes. This was a monumental win. That's wonderful news, Mr. Hayes. Absolutely wonderful. I'll be right out to assist you personally. Who have you been speaking with? Here it came, the moment of reckoning. I've been speaking with one of your salesmen, Damian said, his gaze unwavering. He's tall brown hair wearing a silver suit. His name is Chad. Chad's blood ran cold. The color drained from his face. The smirk was gone, replaced by a slack-jawed expression of dawning horror. It wasn't a coincidence. Chad Peterson. Robert asked, a note of confusion in his voice. He's one of my top guys. Your top guy, Damian repeated the words dripping with ice, just informed me, and I quote, that I can't afford this car. He suggested I look at a used Cadillac instead. He has refused to discuss a bespoke order with me because in his expert assessment, I am not a realistic customer. The silence on the other end of the line was deafening. Robert Miller could feel his career, his dealership's reputation, and the colossal commission all evaporating in real time. He could already see the angry letters from corporate, the negative press. Mr. Hayes, I am speechless. I am horrified. Robert stammered, scrambling out from behind his desk. That is unacceptable. It is inexcusable. I am coming out there right now. Don't bother coming out to save the sale, Robert, Damian said, his voice leaving no room for negotiation. There is no sale to be saved. Not today. I came here to spend over $500,000, but I will not give 1 cent to an establishment that employs a man like that. He paused. There is, however, one thing you can do for me. Anything, Mr. Hayes. Absolutely anything, Robert pleaded, now speed walking through the back offices. Damien looked directly into Chad's terrified eyes. I want you to walk out here and fire him. Right now, in front of me. Then maybe I will consider not taking this issue to your corporate headquarters in the press. The threat was clear, the execution swift. There was no negotiation. Chad stood frozen, a statue of terror. His mind was a maelstrom of denial and panic. This can't be happening. It's a mistake. A prank. But the cold, hard certainty in Damien's eyes told him it was all terrifyingly real. A moment later, Robert Miller burst onto the showroom floor, his face flushed red with a mixture of rage and panic. He ignored Damien for a moment and focused his entire unrestrained fury on his salesman. Peterson, he barked, his voice echoing in the now silent showroom. Everyone was watching. The tech bro, the diamond-draped woman, the junior salesman. They were all witness to the unfolding execution. Mr. Miller, I can explain. Chad stammered, his voice a pathetic squeak. Explain what? Robert roared. Explain how you managed to insult one of the most successful and respected entrepreneurs in the country. Explain how you cost this dealership not only a sale, but its reputation. Pack your personal effects. Get out of my showroom. You are fired. Your employment is terminated, effective immediately. Chad felt the floor drop out from under him. The words hit him like physical blows. Fired. On the spot. Humiliated in front of his colleagues and the very clientele he had worshipped. He looked from Robert's apoplectic face to Damien's impassive one. There was no pity there. Only consequence. He opened his mouth to argue, to beg, but no words came out. Defeated, he turned and began the long, shameful walk towards the employee lockers, the weight of 100 pairs of eyes on his back. His career at Sterling Motors was over. His life as he knew it had just been detonated. Robert Miller turned back to Damien, his expression a mask of profound apology. Mr. Hayes, on behalf of Sterling Motors, I cannot find the words to express my regret. Damien simply held up a hand, silencing him. Actions, Robert, not words. Without another glance at the magnificent car or the groveling manager, Damien Hayes turned and walked out of the dealership, the automatic doors whispering shut behind him. He hadn't gotten his car, but he had delivered a lesson. The initial satisfaction was a dull ember, quickly being replaced by a familiar weariness. But what Damien didn't know as he stepped back into the California sun was that this was not the end. It was merely the first pebble in an avalanche he had just set in motion. The walk of shame from the showroom floor to the employee locker room was the longest journey of Chad Peterson's life. The polished marble that had once felt like a pathway to riches now seemed like a cold, unforgiving glacier. The whispers of his colleagues were like tiny daggers in his back. Kevin, his junior, wouldn't even meet his eye. He could feel the schadenfreude, the fear, the morbid curiosity. He was no longer Chad, the top salesman. He was a cautionary tale, a ghost haunting the dealership before he had even left the building. When he reached his locker and fumbled with the combination, his hands were trembling so badly it took him 3 tries to open it. Inside were the trappings of his failed ambition, a spare silk tie, a bottle of expensive cologne, a framed picture of him and Tiffany on a trip to Cabo he'd paid for with a credit card. Staring at the photo, a wave of pure, unadulterated panic washed over him. How was he going to tell her their entire lifestyle was built on the commissions he bragged about, the image he projected? An image that had just been shattered into a million pieces. Robert Miller was waiting for him at the employee exit, his face still a thunderous mask. He thrust a box containing Chad's desk items at him. Security will escort you to your vehicle. The demonstrator, you have 60 minutes to drive it to your residence and unload your personal belongings. A flatbed tow truck will be there at 3 p.m. to retrieve it. Don't be late. Robert, please, Chad begged, his voice cracking. It was a mistake, a misjudgment. I've made this dealership millions, and you just cost it more in potential damages than you've made in your entire career here. Robert snarled, his voice low and vicious. You didn't just insult a customer, you idiot. You insulted Damien Hayes. Do you have any idea who that is? His company, Ethereum Dynamics, is in the final stages of a multi-billion-dollar technology partnership with the Prestige Automotive Group. Chad stared at him, uncomprehending. Prestige Automotive Group, or PAG, was the global conglomerate that owned Sterling Motors and a dozen other luxury brands. Robert leaned in closer, his breath smelling of stale coffee and fury. This isn't just about a car anymore. This is about a deal that affects the entire future of PAG's electric vehicle division. And you arrogant fool, just spat in the face of the man at the center of it all. Now get out, before I have you thrown out. The words hit Chad harder than the firing itself. This wasn't just a lost sale. He had stumbled into a corporate minefield and pulled the pin on a grenade. The security guard, a large man named Frank, who usually greeted him with a friendly nod, now looked at him with cold indifference. The drive home was a blur of self-recrimination and rising terror. Every traffic light seemed to mock him. Every luxury car that passed him felt like a personal insult. Meanwhile, Damian Hayes was driving his own car, a surprisingly understated Tesla Model S, up into the Hollywood Hills. He wasn't heading home, but to a quiet overlook with a panoramic view of the Los Angeles basin. The adrenaline of the confrontation had faded, leaving behind a sour, familiar taste. He parked the car and stared out at the sprawling city below. He should have felt vindicated. He had faced down prejudice and won. The salesman had been fired. Justice in its most immediate form had been served. But Damian felt no triumph. He just felt tired. He was 38 years old. He was a respected innovator, a leader in his field, a man who commanded audiences of thousands and managed budgets larger than the GDP of some small countries. And yet in a showroom in Beverly Hills, all of that had been erased by the simple fact of his skin color and his choice of clothing. He was still in the eyes of men like Chad Peterson, just a black man in a hoodie who didn't belong. The incident dredged up memories he tried to keep buried. The times he was followed in stores as a teenager. The college professor who'd expressed surprise at his aptitude for complex physics. The early investors who had patronizingly told him his ideas were articulate, but not a fit for our portfolio. He had fought his way through all of it, channeling his frustration into a relentless drive to succeed. He had built Ethereum Dynamics not just as a company, but as a fortress, a place where merit was the only currency that mattered. Yet the world outside his fortress walls hadn't changed as much as he'd hoped. His phone buzzed, pulling him from his thoughts. The caller ID showed a New York area code and a name that made him sit up straight: Arthur Harrison. Arthur Harrison was not just a name, he was a legend in the automotive industry, a ruthless, brilliant old money titan who was the global CEO of the Prestige Automotive Group. He was the man with whom Damian's executive team had been negotiating for the last 6 months. The deal was groundbreaking. Ethereum would exclusively supply its revolutionary solid-state battery technology and its AI-driven energy management software for PAG's entire forthcoming lineup of luxury EVs. It was a deal that would redefine both companies and set the standard for the future of electric luxury. Damian hesitated for a second, then answered. Damian Hayes. Damian. Arthur Harrison. I hope I'm not disturbing you. Harrison's voice was a deep, gravelly baritone that commanded attention. It was the voice of a man used to getting his way. Arthur, I have a minute, Damian replied coolly. Good. I'm calling because I've just been made aware of a deeply regrettable incident that occurred less than an hour ago at our Beverly Hills location. The speed at which the information had traveled up the chain to the global CEO was staggering and a testament to the severity of the situation. Robert Miller informed his regional director, who informed my North American president, who then had the unenviable task of informing me. To say I am appalled would be a gross understatement. Appalled is a good word for it, Damian said, his tone flat. Damian, I want to personally offer you my most sincere, profound apology. Harrison continued, his voice heavy with contrition that Damian suspected was 90% damage control. The behavior of that employee is a betrayal of everything the Prestige Automotive Group stands for. He has, of course, been terminated. I'm aware, I was there, Damian said. There was a slight pause on the other end. Yes, I was told. Damian, I want to make this right. The Phantom, the one you were looking at, it's yours. No charge. A gift from me to you as a token of my apology. We can have it delivered to your home this evening. It was the classic rich man's solution: throw money at the problem until it goes away. By forgiveness, Damian almost laughed. Arthur, you seem to be under the impression that this was about a car. It wasn't. It was about the culture in your showroom that allowed a man like that to feel comfortable, even entitled to treat a potential customer with such blatant disrespect. A free car doesn't fix that culture. Harrison's tone became more serious. The easy fix had been rejected. You're right, of course. This goes deeper. This is a systemic issue, one we clearly need to address. What can I do, Damien? What can PAG do to demonstrate that we are taking this with the utmost seriousness? Damien looked out at the city again. A few hours ago, he was just a son trying to buy a gift. Now he was in a position of immense and unexpected leverage. This was no longer just about a fired salesman or a single dealership. It was about the Prestige Automotive Group. It was about their multi-billion-dollar partnership. And an idea bold and audacious began to form in his mind. This was an opportunity, not for revenge, but for something far more meaningful. I need some time to think about that, Arthur, Damien said slowly. This has broadened the scope of my concerns regarding our potential partnership. Let's schedule a meeting, my office, early next week. And Arthur, he added, his voice hardening just enough to convey the weight of his words, you should come in person. He hung up the phone, the silence of the overlook rushing back in. The game had changed. The stakes had been raised from a $500,000 car to a multi-billion-dollar enterprise. The story was no longer about what happened to Chad Peterson. It was about what Damien Hayes was going to do next. And as the sun began its slow descent towards the Pacific, another drama was unfolding online. A bystander in the showroom, a teenager who had been filming the exotic cars for his social media, had caught the whole exchange on his phone. The confrontation, the firing. He had just uploaded it with a simple incendiary title, Black Man Humiliated at Luxury Dealership Gets Salesman Fired on the Spot. The video was beginning to get its first few hundred views. The avalanche was starting to rumble. The internet moves at the speed of outrage. The teenager's video, shaky and poorly framed, possessed an ingredient more potent than any high-production value documentary, raw, unvarnished reality. It began its life on TikTok, where the platform's algorithm, sensing a surge of engagement, comments, shares, likes, began pushing it relentlessly. The title alone was pure clickbait gold. Within 3 hours, it had 100,000 views. By evening, it had broken the million-view barrier and was migrating like a digital supervirus to other platforms. Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, Reddit. Sterling Shame and Firestorm at Sterling started trending. The video was dissected, debated, and amplified. News aggregators and celebrity gossip sites, smelling blood in the water, wrote quick, breathless articles. They didn't have all the facts, but they had the video, and the video was damning. They identified the dealership as Sterling Motors of Beverly Hills. They lionized the calm, mysterious man in the hoodie. And they absolutely vilified the smug salesman in the silver suit. Chad Peterson, sitting in the gloom of his now silent condo, was oblivious to his newfound infamy. He was too busy dealing with a more immediate crisis, Tiffany. He had tried to downplay it, to spin it as a disagreement, a temporary setback. But Tiffany, whose intuition for financial stability was as sharp as a stiletto heel, saw right through it. So Miller overreacted, but I'll have a new job in a week, Chad was saying, his voice strained with false bravado. Every luxury brand in this city knows me. I'll be selling Ferraris by Monday. Tiffany, who had been scrolling silently on her phone, looked up. Her face was pale. Is this you, Chad? She asked, her voice barely a whisper. She turned her phone around. On the screen was the viral video. It was a close-up of his face, twisted in that smug, condescending sneer as he delivered the line, "You can't afford this car." Chad stared at the screen. The blood drained from his face. It was him. 1,000,000 people, then 2, then 5, were watching his single greatest professional miscalculation. They were seeing him at his absolute worst. "Where did you get that?" he stammered. "Where? It's everywhere, Chad. It's on every blog. They're calling you the salesman from hell. They're calling for a boycott of Sterling Motors." She threw the phone on the sofa. "You didn't just have a disagreement. You became a meme for racist, arrogant salesmen. You're not getting a job selling Ferraris on Monday. You'll be lucky to get a job selling used Kias in Van Nuys. Do you have any idea what this does to us?" To me, the argument that followed was brutal and short. It was the culmination of months of financial stress and broken promises. His firing was not the cause of the breakup, it was the catalyst. By the time the sun set, Tiffany had packed her bags. The framed photo from Cabo lay face down on the coffee table. The silence in the condo was no longer just gloomy, it was tomb-like. As Chad's personal world imploded, the corporate world of the Prestige Automotive Group was in full-blown panic mode. In their North American headquarters in New Jersey and their global headquarters in Munich, lights burned late into the night. The PR department was fielding a tidal wave of negative press inquiries. Their social media teams were trying and failing to contain the digital inferno, with bland corporate statements about commitment to diversity that were being mercilessly mocked online. The stock market doesn't wait for apologies. When the Frankfurt Stock Exchange opened on Monday morning, Piaget's stock, PAG-DE, immediately dropped 4%. By midday, it was down 7%, wiping out over 2 billion euros in market capitalization. The incident was no longer just a PR nightmare, it was a financial catastrophe. Analysts were openly questioning the stability of PAG's leadership, and more importantly, the status of the rumored deal with Ethereum Dynamics. The deal that was supposed to be their salvation in the EV race was now being cited as a potential casualty of their own internal rot. Robert Miller, the manager of Sterling Motors, found himself in a hell of his own making. He was suspended pending a full corporate investigation. His days were a blur of conference calls with furious high-priced lawyers and executives from Munich who screamed at him in German-accented English. They held him responsible for hiring Chad, for fostering the culture, for not somehow magically knowing that a man in a hoodie was a reclusive billionaire. His career, he knew, was over. He had fired Chad to save himself, but it was becoming clear that he had only managed to delay his own execution. By Tuesday, the story had evolved. Journalists digging deeper had identified the man in the hoodie. Tech billionaire Damien Hayes, CEO of Ethereum Dynamics, at center of Sterling shame viral video. This new revelation added rocket fuel to the fire. It was no longer an anonymous citizen, it was a prominent black CEO. The narrative shifted from a simple case of bad service to a powerful commentary on systemic racism and corporate hypocrisy. Damien watched it all unfold from the cool, quiet command center of his Bel Air home. He had ignored hundreds of calls from reporters. He had issued a single terse no comment through his company's press office. He was letting the firestorm rage, knowing that it was strengthening his position with every passing hour. The rage was a tool. The public outcry was leverage. Arthur Harrison wasn't just flying to Los Angeles to apologize for a rude salesman anymore. He was flying in to save his company. On Wednesday morning, Chad Peterson's professional ruin was complete. He had sent out his resume to a dozen other high-end dealerships. The responses were swift and brutal. "We appreciate your interest, but the position has been filled. Unfortunately, we do not feel you are the right fit for our brand at this time." One manager, a man he knew from industry events, was more direct. "Are you kidding me, Chad? You're radioactive. No one will touch you. You're the face of everything a luxury brand doesn't want to be." Desperate, he called a headhunter who specialized in automotive placements. The woman was blunt. "Mr. Peterson, my advice to you is to change careers, or move to a different state where your face isn't recognizable to 10 million people." The video has been seen by everyone in this industry. Your reputation is not just damaged, it is gone. That afternoon, the final blow landed. He received an email from the bank. Due to his change in employment status, the preliminary approval for the refinancing of his mortgage had been rescinded. Foreclosure proceedings would begin in 30 days. He sat on the floor of his empty condo, the eviction notice glowing on his phone screen, the silence pressing in. He had lost his job, his fiancée, his car, and soon his home, all because he had looked at a man in a hoodie and made a judgment. He had believed himself to be a gatekeeper of a world of wealth and power, only to discover he was nothing but a pawn swept off the board in a game played by kings, and the king he had insulted was now preparing for a meeting that would decide the fate of an empire. The Ethereum Dynamics headquarters was an architectural marvel nestled in Silicon Beach. It wasn't a sterile corporate tower, but a sprawling campus of glass, reclaimed wood, and living green walls designed to foster collaboration and innovation. It was a physical manifestation of Damien Hayes' philosophy, forward-thinking, environmentally conscious, and meticulously engineered. It was his turf. Arthur Harrison, CEO of the Prestige Automotive Group, felt it the moment he stepped out of his chauffeured Mercedes S-Class, a Paggy product of course. He was a man accustomed to the oak-paneled old-world power of German boardrooms and the sleek, imposing towers of Wall Street. This place felt different, younger, smarter, and unnervingly confident. He smoothed his Savile Row suit, feeling uncharacteristically like a relic from a bygone era. He was escorted to the main boardroom on the top floor. The room had one wall made entirely of smart glass, currently showcasing a panoramic, high-definition view of the Pacific Ocean. Damian Hayes was standing by the window, not in a hoodie but in a perfectly tailored, dark blue suit that spoke of quiet, modern power. He wasn't wearing a tie. "Arthur," Damian said, turning. His expression was neutral, his handshake firm. "Thank you for making the trip." "Damian, the pleasure is mine, though I wish the circumstances were different," Harrison replied, his deep voice filling the room. He was flanked by two of his top executives, his chief legal officer and the president of PAG North America. They looked tense and exhausted. Damian was alone. They sat at a massive, minimalist table made from a single slab of polished concrete. A tray with water and coffee was present, but no one touched it. "I trust your journey was acceptable." Damian began dispensing with small talk. "It was fine," Harrison said, deciding to meet the issue head-on. "Damian, I'll be direct. The events of last Saturday were a corporate failure of the highest order. It was a disgusting and unforgivable display of prejudice that has shaken my company to its core. My apology is absolute. The question before us now, the reason I am here, is what we do about it. My stock has lost nearly 10% of its value. My brand is being savaged online. And our partnership, the most important strategic initiative for our future, is in jeopardy. So I ask you again, what can we do to make this right?" Damian listened patiently until Harrison was finished. He let the silence hang for a beat, letting the PAG CEO's desperation settle in the air. "Let's be clear about something, Arthur." Damian said, his voice calm, but with a core of steel. "Your stock didn't drop because a salesman was rude to me. It dropped because the incident revealed a vulnerability that the market is now punishing you for. It revealed that your company culture might be a relic. In a world moving towards new ideas, new demographics, and new money, you are seen as the old guard, exclusionary and out of touch. Your salesman wasn't a rogue employee. He was a symptom of the disease. The market is worried that the company that couldn't see the billionaire in a hoodie is the same company that will miss the next big shift in technology and consumer behavior." Harrison and his team shifted uncomfortably. Damian wasn't just talking about a PR problem. He was delivering a brutal business diagnosis. "A free car doesn't fix that," Damian continued. "Firing the manager, which I hear you've now done, doesn't fix that. A press release full of empty platitudes about diversity certainly won't fix that." He leaned forward, placing his hands on the table. "I have had some time to think about what making it right looks like. I'm no longer interested in your apologies. I'm interested in your actions. Tangible, measurable, and impactful actions." The PAG legal officer started to speak. "Mr. Hayes, if this is about a financial settlement..." Damian held up a hand, silencing him instantly. "This is not about me. I don't want a single dollar of your money for myself. This is about the principle. You have a problem, Arthur, a deep-seated cultural one. I am offering you a chance to turn your greatest public humiliation into your most profound public triumph." Damian slid a sleek, thin tablet across the table. On the screen was a detailed proposal. Harrison picked it up, his brow furrowed as he read. "I call it the PAG Ethereum Future Forward Initiative," Damian explained as they read. "It has two main components. First, the contract for Ethereum's battery and AI technology. We are amending the terms. There will be a new clause, a social covenant." He outlined the points. "One Prestige Automotive Group will commit $100 million of seed funding to establish a new independent charitable foundation. This foundation will be dedicated to providing scholarships, mentorship, and STEM education for underprivileged youth in underserved communities across North America and Europe. Its goal will be to create a direct pipeline of diverse talent into the tech and engineering sectors." Harrison's eyes widened at the number. $100 million. It was an astronomical sum. "Two," Damian went on, PAG will implement a mandatory top-to-bottom diversity, equity, and inclusion training program for every single employee, from the board of directors in Munich to the junior salesman in Beverly Hills. The curriculum will be developed by a third-party expert panel approved by a joint committee from both our companies. 3. A significant percentage of your corporate internship and entry-level recruitment positions, I'm suggesting 30% within 3 years, will be filled by graduates from programs supported by this new foundation. You will not just fund their education, you will give them a path to employment. You will actively change the face of your own company. He sat back. That is the first part of the solution. It's not a punishment, Arthur. It's an investment in your own future. It turns this disaster into a powerful story. PAG, humbled by its failings, now leads the charge in creating opportunity in shaping a more inclusive industry. Your PR department will love it. More importantly, it will be real. Harrison was silent, his face unreadable. He looked at his legal officer, who was pale. This was beyond anything they had anticipated. It was audacious, unprecedented. And the second component, Harrison asked, his voice strained. The second component is about our deal, Damien said. If you agree to this social covenant, if you sign it into the bedrock of our partnership, then I will not only proceed with the deal, but I will personally front a joint press conference with you. I will stand beside you and endorse this initiative. I will tell the world that PAG has made a mistake, but it has responded with character and a genuine commitment to change. I will use my credibility to help you salvage your brand. He leaned in one last time. Essentially, Arthur, you have two choices. You can refuse and our deal is dead. Ethereum will partner with one of your competitors, who I assure you are calling me daily, and your company will be remembered for this scandal for a generation. Or you can agree. You can turn this into a legacy. You will spend $100 million, yes, but you will secure a multi-billion-dollar technology deal, salvage your stock price, and actually do some tangible good in the world. So what will it be? The room was silent. Harrison looked at the proposal on the tablet, then at the man across from him. He saw no anger in Damien's eyes, no thirst for revenge. He saw a brilliant, ruthless strategist who had turned a personal insult into an instrument of immense power and, shockingly, of positive change. In that moment, Arthur Harrison understood. Damien Hayes wasn't just a tech CEO, he was the future. And the only way for the Prestige Automotive Group to be a part of that future was to accept his terms. Slowly, deliberately, Arthur Harrison extended his hand across the concrete table. You have a deal, Damien, he said. You have a deal. 6 months later, the world looked very different for everyone involved in the incident at Sterling Motors. The joint press conference between Damien Hayes and Arthur Harrison had been a global media event. Standing side by side, they announced not only the finalized multi-billion-dollar Ethereum PAG partnership, but also the launch of the Future Forward initiative. Damien spoke eloquently about turning moments of division into opportunities for unity and progress. Harrison, looking humbled but resolute, spoke of his company's commitment to not just building the cars of the future, but building the people of the future. The narrative shifted overnight. PAG was no longer the villain. They were the redeemed. Their stock price not only recovered, but soared to new heights on the back of the Ethereum deal and the immense positive press from the initiative. Future Forward began trending for all the right reasons. Damien Hayes became more than just a successful CEO. He became a symbol of a new kind of power, one that sought not to punish, but to build. He sat on the board of the new foundation, taking an active role. On a crisp autumn afternoon, he visited the first community center, funded by the initiative. It was located in Inglewood, not 5 miles from the garage where his father had worked for 40 years. He watched as a group of teenagers, black and brown faces, full of concentration and excitement, worked on a robotics project using kits funded by the foundation. Their instructor was a young engineer from Ethereum who was volunteering his time. Damien saw himself in their faces, the same hunger, the same raw potential. A young girl, maybe 14, came up to him to excitedly explain the coding she was doing. In that moment, Damien felt a sense of victory, more profound than any business deal or corporate takedown. This was the real win. This was the culture he was building. His father, George, got his Rolls-Royce. Damien didn't buy it from Sterling Motors. He commissioned it directly from the factory in Goodwood, England, and flew his father there for a personal tour to finalize the specifications. Seeing the look of pure, unadulterated joy on the old mechanic's face as he sat in the driver's seat of his British racing green dream car was a reward in itself. Robert Miller, the former manager of Sterling Motors, surprisingly landed on his feet. Impressed by his swift, if self-serving, initial action and his cooperation with the internal investigation, PAG offered him a new role. He was made the administrative director for the West Coast rollout of the new mandatory DEI training program. It was a humbling step down in pay and prestige, but it gave him a new sense of purpose. He was now tasked with preventing the very culture he had once inadvertently overseen. And Chad Peterson karma for him was not a single dramatic event, but a slow, grinding erosion of a life he once knew. He had lost the condo. After 2 months of couch surfing, he finally found a cramped, dingy apartment in the valley. His tailored suits hung in the closet like ghosts of a former self. He sold them one by one to pay his rent. His name and face were too notorious for any customer-facing role in a major city. He eventually found a job not selling cars, but processing telemarketing leads for a subprime auto loan company. He worked in a bleak, windowless call center, a cubicle farm smelling of burnt coffee and desperation. His job was to call people with poor credit, people who were struggling, and try to talk them into high-interest loans for unreliable used cars. He was now preying on the very people he once would have considered beneath him. One evening, while eating a cheap microwave dinner in his lonely apartment, he saw a news segment on TV. It was an update on the Future Forward initiative. It showed Damian Hayes at the Inglewood Community Center laughing with the students. It featured an interview with the 14-year-old girl who spoke passionately about wanting to be an aerospace engineer. The report mentioned the $100 million foundation and the transformative partnership between Ethereum and PAG. Chad watched the plastic fork frozen halfway to his mouth. The sheer scale of it all finally crashed down on him. His petty prejudice, his arrogant words on that Saturday afternoon had not just cost him his job. It had set in motion a chain of events that reshaped a global corporation and created a $100 million force for good in the world. He had tried to make one man feel small, and in doing so had revealed just how small he truly was. He hadn't just underestimated Damian Hayes' bank account. He had fundamentally underestimated the man. He had seen a black man in a hoodie and judged him. He had failed to see the visionary, the strategist, the king, who didn't just capture a piece on the board, but changed the rules of the game itself. The karma that hit Chad Peterson wasn't just about losing his job or his fiancée. It was the crushing, lifelong weight of this realization. He was an insignificant footnote in a story where he had foolishly, arrogantly cast himself as the lead. He was a small man who had stood in the path of history and been washed away by the tide, left to watch from the shore, as the world he thought he knew was rebuilt by the very man he had tried to keep out. This story is a powerful reminder that prejudice and arrogance often blind us to the reality of the person standing right in front of us. It began with a single demeaning sentence born from a snap judgment, but it didn't end with a simple firing. It escalated into a masterclass in leverage, turning a moment of personal insult into a monumental force for corporate and social change. Damian Hayes didn't just seek revenge. He sought restitution on a scale his offender could never have imagined. He used his power not to crush the man who wronged him, but to build a better future for thousands who might have faced similar barriers. If you were moved or inspired by this story of hard karma and ultimate justice, please give this video a thumbs up. It really helps the channel grow. Share this video with someone who needs to hear that doing the right thing and standing up to prejudice can have effects that ripple out further than we can see. And of course, if you haven't already, hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications for more true life stories of drama, consequences, and unexpected triumphs. We'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. What part of this story hit you the hardest?